We all know that government spending is an important driver of economic activity, but the type of spending and where that spending takes place has a big impact on local economies. That's why at IPPR North we have set out to understand how the June 2013 spending round will affect the regions of England in different ways. The Chancellor made announcements about the different department spending cuts in percentage terms, largely focusing on single-figure reductions to current expenditure and the ring-fencing of health, schools and international development budgets. The following day, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury highlighted significant capital investments in infrastructure, spelling out potential projects rather than the relatively small percentage increases in spending. When we look at the actual spending cuts, with capital and current expenditure combined, the severity of cuts to local government becomes startlingly clear, as do the real terms cuts to the departments responsible for education, business, police and justice. But how will these cuts play out across the country? If we assume that each department will spend in a similar pattern across the nation as it has done in the past few years, then we can have an idea of the aggregate impact of spending cuts in each English region. London fares the worst with a net loss of £1.3 billion of government spending from its economy. But this has as much to do with the fact that so much government spending takes place in London in the first place. Current spending cuts will also have big effects in the North West and South East. But when we consider the potential impact of government spending cuts on the economy of each region, the picture looks very different. Projected cuts in London and the South East represent a loss of just 0.39% of the economy, whereas elsewhere the impact is much greater, with the three northern regions worst affected. Comparing this to forecast annual economic growth, the impact on the North East is even more stark and could be 3 times worse than in London. The cuts are equivalent to just 14% of London's annual growth, but nearly half of projected growth in the North East. This, of course, stores up further problems for the future, because instead of driving growth and prosperity in the North, it entrenches the region's dependency further. And if we look at the figures in per capita terms, although every person in London could be losing government goods and services to the tune of nearly £150 per person, individuals in the North East and North West look set to lose out by £30 to £40 more than fellow citizens in the East and South East of England. If you then combine this with the impact of last year's autumn statement and this year's budget changes to tax and benefits, again you can see how people living in different regions are feeling the effects of austerity in very different ways. We have estimated that the net effect of tax and benefit changes, together with the loss in public services based on the 2013 spending round cuts, will affect the average annual household income in the North East by up to £362, compared with £493 in London and £284 in the east of England. Somehow we need to move away from patterns of public spending which turbocharge the economy in the capital city whilst constraining growth in England's regions and making it more and more dependent on redistributive handouts from central coffers in the form of grants and benefits. By developing the modelling we have used to carry out this analysis, IPPR North is now working to bring forward plans for the next big spending review in 2015, which will see a more even spread of public investment, focusing on growth opportunities in the North, which over time will reduce social security requirements and those forms of government spending.